My name is Eric Van Horn. I bought my first franchise in my 20s, and since then, I've owned 6 brands with 25 stores in 8 states. I've also helped 1,000 people find the right franchise for them. People like us who are not cut out for the 9 to 5 and like to work smarter, not harder. How do we find the right franchise, buy it, grow it, sell it, and how do we do it in a way to own the business without it owning us? Those are the questions, and I'm on a mission to give you the answers. Welcome to Franchise Secrets. Welcome to Franchise Secrets. This is Eric Van Horn, and I am here today with Doc Cohen. Doc is a franchise legend. I've heard about him for years, never had the opportunity to actually meet him, but I've had really great friends in franchising rave about this man called Doc Cohen. I know that he was an IFA chairman, president, or the IFA chair of the foundation, franchisee of the year 3 times, and franchisee of the decade. But I am going to want to dive into some things with him about life as a franchisee, also having this other life as an IFA chairman, and then diving into some things like what's it like for franchisors to be private equity run versus kind of that mom and pop family run type feel. They sell out to private equity. What's the difference? What to look for? And then most importantly, I think what we're going to dive into first is how to buy a franchise. And everybody knows me, like I help a lot of people look at really good brands out there, but I wanted to have a real, raw, honest conversation with someone with the experience that Doc has. And so I might be peppering him with some questions. So Doc, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric. It's good to be here. And I don't know how I'm going to live up to that introduction, but I'll try.
I know. Well, Don and Jim DeBolt were raving about you back when I was a solo franchisee. And I know, you know, those guys, and then Sean and just a lot of people. And so it really is like, I've been looking forward to this interview for years, and you didn't know that, but I talked to Jim about this a while ago and I was supposed to get an introduction, and I don't think he ever did it. So I'm going to have to blame him for the delay. Why don't you give the audience just a little bit of your background? You're a franchisee currently with Great American Cookies and Pretzelmaker, but you just have just such a wide background in franchising that nobody has.
Well, it all started back 40 some years ago, I guess. I'm only 45, though. I started at a very early age.
Of course you did.
I was living in the LA area, and I was vice president of a drugstore chain. And I'm going to abbreviate this whole story, or otherwise you'd be here for hours. But I was an early victim of corporate downsizing, except back then they just called it getting fired. So I ended up with no car because I had a company car. I had a house, a mortgage, and a dog. No money.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, now they're not so politically, back then they weren't so politically correct. It was just firing, you're gone. Today, there's a lot of politically correct terms around that right now.
There are, but at any rate, the whole senior management team, except for the owners, were terminated. And then, I was looking around for something to do. My sister saw this startup cookie company thing in Atlanta at Perimeter Mall, and they said they were lined up around the mall waiting to buy cookies. You need to look at this. I'm thinking, how many cookies you have to sell to pay the rent in one of those malls? A bunch. I can think of several 4-letter words to go before that, but at any rate, history is that I looked for a location in California, found one, flew to Atlanta to sign all the documents, sitting around the table in the lawyer's office, and they tell me to have good news and bad news. So,
oh boy. What did you ask for first? Did you want the good news, or do you guys want the bad news first?
Don't tell me that. Just give me the news, So the bad news was that California was a disclosure state back before the FDA took over, and they couldn't sell me a franchise there. So I ended up in Lafayette, Louisiana, believe it or not.
A little different than California.
Well, I had never heard of the place. I lived in California. I thought Louisiana was a suburb of New Orleans. What did I know? Well, anyway, long story short, actually opened that store and started setting records from the very first day, sales records. And so that's kind of how I got into it. I was the only franchisee back then.
So you were setting records big time because you're the only franchisee. You were competing with corporate stores to be
Correct.
clear.
Right. There were corporate stores in Atlanta. And in fact, that's where I trained. And then, I just started expanding. I told the founders, Arthur Karp and Michael Coles, that I had no interest in being a single store owner. I was used to drugstore chain. I'm not going to do a single store. And sort of the rest is history. Started expanding in Louisiana. And one of my landlords wanted me to come to his mall in Panama City, Florida. And so I had to jump over 2 states. And then I figured, well, I'll fill in. And, then open in Baton Rouge. Opportunity came up in Texas. I took that 4 stores to do in Texas.
So when you say opportunity came up, so I want to dive into some of this stuff because right now we're in the middle of coronavirus and, you're on lockdown, I'm on lockdown. And once we release this, who knows, hopefully everybody is just light social distancing, right? But there's going to be opportunity. And I love talking about expansion, how franchisees expand, because some of it is buying out others. Some of it's buying out cash flow. Some of it's buying out underperformers at a discount. And sometimes it's just opening up new ones. So do you want to tell us what that 4-store opportunity looked like?
Well, I had joined the ICSC shortly after I got into the business, and I had gone to visit with a number of landlords at the ICSC.
And that's a landlord. The ICSC is a retail, like they have huge conferences right now, right?
Right. International Council of Shopping Centers.
And so a lot of franchisors are members of that these days, and they'll go there and talk to all the different retail managers out there. And usually it's in Vegas a lot of times. I don't know if it always is, but I just want to give some context for the audience that doesn't know what that is.
It's a huge convention, 40,000 people. Primarily the landlord, all the major landlords, all the landlords that I know of have booths, and you set up appointments, you go visit with them. I had met with a couple of landlords that had opportunities in Texas, and I wanted to do them. Went to the franchisor and said, I've got these 4 stores here I'd like to develop. And they said, well, how do we know you can do that?
You didn't have the track record.
Yeah, I did. I said, well, I've got the 2 stores here, and was fortunate that they let me do it. The first store we opened was, Corpus Christi, Texas.
Oh my gosh.
At that store, believe it or not, during grand opening, I'll tell you how busy it was. First of all, it set a record for sales, a number they had never dreamed of. But we were so busy at that store that the pavers in front of our store were worn out. And the company that made the pavers came and wanted to test different types of tile because they had never seen that before.
What was it? Was it just a new novel concept with really good cookies, and that's what drove it? Or is it the location, or like just a combination of that?
It's a combination. It was a brand new mall. We had a great location at Center Court. And I have to tell you, those cookies are awesome.
I've had them.
It's like a potato chip. You can't just have one. We were working around the clock. We had a night crew come in at closing. We would close up the store, clean everything, and then a night crew would come in at 10 o'clock and start baking all night just to keep up with it.
You were now in expansion mode, and then you ended up getting into other brands as well. I know that you've been in coffee and pretzels and I believe TCBY. Like collapse that time frame for me.
Oh, I don't know if I can do that. Let's see.
It takes a lot of talent to be able to do that. This is a big test for you.
Oh yeah, I love tests. In college, I failed most of them. But
I was like a straight C student, but in business, I excel.
Yeah, well, you beat me. Let me see the timeline. I guess it was probably 10 years into it. And I got into TCBY by accident. There was a mall here in Houston, a very, very good one, in fact, where the franchisee was not performing. He was a great American cookie franchisee, but he also had TCBY in the location. And the landlord put him in default. The franchisors put him in default. The landlord called me and asked me if I would take over the location, and I did, and that's how I ended up with soft serve yogurt ice cream. There was another store that came up in another Houston mall where they had Freshens, and so we bought that store, and now I'm in two different brands of soft serve. Coffee, I'm very, very good friends with Joanne and Julius Shaw, who own Coffee Beanery. And I don't know, it just said, let's try putting coffee in. And
But you saw, I mean, you were good in one area, and there were businesses that kind of complemented it. You were kind of in the same that I don't know what you call it, but that type of niche market within the food space. And so
yeah,
you could spot opportunity, because some people would just think, I'm just going to continue to go with my one brand, but you could spot opportunity and you started to diversify.
yeah. And when you're paying the kind of rents that the malls get, if you can add a complementary brand to the same space and add those sales, it helps you pay the rent.
Yeah.
And so today, I mean, the rents are just so high in the malls, but we've been successful. I haven't done one yet, but we've been very successful now going outside of the mall,
Mm-hmm.
doing Marble Slab and Great American combo stores in strip center.
Oh, Marble Slab is some good ice cream.
Oh, yeah. It's owned by our franchisor.
Okay.
So Global Franchise Group owns Great American Cookies, it owns Pretzelmaker, and it owns Marble Slab. And so it just made a lot of sense when they started acquiring these other brands, gave those of us who had run out of opportunities in the cookie business to develop new brands that were complementary. And it was a smart move by the folks over there, by our franchisor. And most of us took advantage of it. It's worked out very well.
I like that. I want to transition into like buying a franchise, and just to give some more context, like the audience that doesn't know, check out the IFA, which is the International Franchise Association. And I've had an opportunity to meet some of their former chairs in different meetings. And Doc was the chair for the IFA, which is like what would you call it? The industry.
It's the spokesman organization for all of franchising.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the voice of franchising. You've got franchisors, obviously, franchisees, and franchise suppliers who all come together and share experiences. It's an amazing organization that you have competitors sharing ideas
Yeah.
with
Yep.
each other. And it's just really the only place that you can get that.
I like that, Doc, because I have a Facebook group called Franchise Tribe. I need to get you in there if you're not in there already. You on Facebook?
I am.
All right. I'm going to get you in that group, Franchise Tribe, and there's competing brands within there, like, because there's a bunch of, franchising, our main competitors aren't each other. It's the mom and pops for the most part. And so I've had the opportunity to be a part of different brands that I've purchased, and franchisees are competitors of mine in different industries. And yet we become really good friends. And we're like, we're better together as friends than we are like seeing each other as competitors. And so I've seen that, and I know some of the behind the scenes stuff that happens. Even now, dealing with the coronavirus and stuff, I know competitors are talking to each other to help each other survive and hopefully thrive at the end of this, as working together versus like fighting against each other. That's been interesting. I want to get back to the IFA in a little bit, but thanks for that overview. You have purchased multiple brands. You've been around the game. You see how the inner workings of people buying franchises work, being a chair of the IFA and kind of being the spokesperson in many ways for all of the franchises out there. I have my own opinions on like who should be buying, why they should buy, who shouldn't be buying brands, how you should investigate. And I help people do all of that as a franchise consultant. But I want to dive into that from your perspective. I'm sure we have similar thoughts and whatnot, but anytime I get to be around a legend, somebody like you that has 20, I have 20 years of experience, you have 40 years of experience. I'm a sponge in these environments. So let's just dive into how to buy a franchise. Where do you want to start?
If somebody has no idea what they want to do or what kind of franchise they want to buy, what kind of space, is it a service franchise, is it food, is it hospitality, I refer them to IFA's website, which is franchise.org, and there's a section in the website that lists franchise opportunities, and you can look at all of the member companies. We have 1,400 or so franchisor members, and you can look through that. And first, the most important thing is to pick an industry that you like. If you get up every day to go to work and you hate it, you're not going to be successful. So the first thing I tell people is look at different areas and find an area that you think appeals to you and that you'd enjoy doing. And once you do that, then go through all of the franchisors that are in that space.
So let me pause there and we'll get to the franchisors in that space because I want to dive into this a little bit more. I don't know if we even agree on this part. So, and it's okay if we don't. I
Sure.
want to know when you say enjoy it, let's use the Great American Cookies for an example. Is it that you love like cookies in the oven or the designs on the cookies or the taste of the cookies? Or is it something else that you love about that model or that industry?
Well, I liked it because I love to cook. I love to bake. And it was something that appealed to me.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at it and I said, yeah, I could really be happy being a cookie guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I dove into it. I had an opportunity a long time ago to do a Burger King franchise
Mm-hmm.
and start off with 4 stores. And I said, I just don't think that's for me. But when I saw this cookie thing, it was the simplicity of it all,
Mm-hmm.
which has gotten a lot more complicated lately.
I bet.
But it was pretty simple when I came in. All we sold was cookies. We had 6 flavors. That was it. We didn't sell beverages. We didn't sell coffee.
The
We didn't
good old
sell.
days, man. The good old days.
And then, so I mean, it was really a simple operation to run.
Michael Gerber, who wrote the EMyth, and this is a perfect example, he says, if you're a baker and you love baking, don't start a bakery because then you'll be the person that bakes all the cookies and bakes all the cakes and you try to not do that. Then they're going to come back and say, the customers come back and they're like, I want Doc to bake the cookies today because he's the best baker of the cookies. And then all of a sudden the thing that you enjoyed becomes your worst nightmare. The question in that is, I know that didn't happen to you and you were able to not fall into that trap. So I'd be interested just to know like how you grew that because I love how you love that business, but how did you not fall in the trap?
I'm not sure.
Not like, because today, are you in there? What do you enjoy about it today? The cookie franchise.
What I enjoy the most about it, and I rarely get to do it, is go in a store and make the cookies.
You still enjoy that.
I still enjoy that. And talking to customers and throwing things out, trying to be a good example to the many kids that we have working for us. We're sometimes the first employer of many high school kids.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the training that we like to do is to get them to be more comfortable talking to people, making eye contact with strangers,
Mm-hmm.
throwing things out to customers like, oh, we have a special today. Really, what is it? There's no limit on how many cookies you can buy today.
Yeah.
And, you throw those things out and it's very rewarding.
So that makes sense. So in other words, you really enjoy that aspect of the business, and yet it didn't consume you. You didn't get caught up in the customers, like Michael Gerber's example, like you had to be the guy in there baking all the time or the customers didn't show up. And I think that's one of the things with the franchise, like they give you the system of doing it. So even though you enjoyed that, you enjoyed other things about it as well. The simplicity of the model and probably the customers, seeing the customers and how happy they are and whatnot versus like the Burger King example, right?
My background's in pharmacy and chain drugstores. And I have to tell you, when a customer comes into a drugstore to get a prescription, they don't want that prescription.
Yeah.
They don't, they've been sick. They waited at the doctor's office for 2 hours. They don't want to, they have to buy it because they need it, but they don't want to buy it. But when they come up to the cookie store, they want to buy those cookies.
Yep.
And it's just a great kind of business where your people just walk away so happy. And I have to tell you, a lot of people buy one, and before they get 10 feet away from the store, they turn around, come back. As we developed and ended up with 20, 30, 40 stores, I got confined to my office most of the time.
Yep.
Because now I'm running the business.
Yep.
Managing the business where my heart's really at the store level.
So that's interesting. And I can see why you said that earlier, that you just enjoyed it, because a lot of people want to get to that managing 20 to 30. But that does take you out of the day-to-day of it. So you found yourselves having a lot. You were not in the business anymore, which you still enjoyed being in. That's why you have, one or two or three now. I get that now. It makes sense why, that is on the important list of enjoying the business. And then, so going back to where we were, so find an industry that you enjoy, or at least don't hate. If you hate the industry, or if you even enjoy, let's say it was food and you didn't have happy customers, it was cookies, but you didn't have happy customers, that wouldn't be congruent with what you wanted either. Because it's kind of like all in the same. The people that were your customers were happy, you're making a good product. So there's multiple things there that made that attractive to you. So find an industry that you like and you enjoy, and at least you don't hate, because you don't want one of those. Then you're on the IFA website looking at 1,400 different brands. Then what?
Well, then you pick one or two in the same industry, or three even, and you start to compare them. And what I tell people, of course, you're aware, of course, maybe your audience is not quite aware, that when you first meet with a franchisor, they have to give you a document known as the FDD, the Franchise Disclosure Document. You need to read that. And you need to have a franchise specialty attorney look at it with you.
Not your mortgage attorney?
No. Probably whole different animal here. No, I mean, I love my business attorney, but when I have a franchise issue, I have a franchise attorney do that.
100%.
You can read those FDDs and the license agreement because you're going to have to sign it, and you should know what it says and what your obligations are. One of the most important things that a prospective franchisee can do, and I tell people who call me, if you don't do anything else that I suggest, do this. Call as many existing franchisees in the system as you possibly can and talk to them about, are they happy? If knowing what they know today, would they have done this again? Are they expanding? If not, why not? How good is the franchisor in working with franchisees? Do they treat you as a partner? Not a legal partner, but a partner in
working together. Partner, we're in this together.
Right. If a franchisor's focus is to make franchisees successful, then that's a good franchise. If you get somebody that considers the franchisees franchise partners, that's great. But if you have somebody whose home office attitude is, oh, those darn franchisees, if we just didn't have them.
Because let's face it, franchisees are not always the easiest to deal with. They're dealing with the best and the worst of the franchisees. And they're in any system, there's going to be the best and the worst franchisees. So when you are making those calls, you need to know who you're talking to as well. The input that they give you needs to come through a different filter, whether they're a top performer, an average performer, or a bottom performer. Have you noticed that as well? Like the way that their performance versus kind of how they give people advice or or the answers is different based on their type of performance most of the time?
Well, remember when I started, there weren't any franchise.
Yeah, you were like,
Oh.
oh my
but to,
gosh.
but today, franchisees are far more sophisticated than I was back then. I like to call franchisees who have left the system,
Mm-hmm.
and I like to talk to them because I'd like to know why they left the system. Now, sometimes that's a sign of bad relationships. Sometimes it's just a sign that the location didn't work
Mm-hmm.
out. I mean, every location's not going to be successful. And I like to hear what they say about the franchisor in a negative way. And then when I'm talking to existing franchisees, I can sort of prod them into that kind of discussion. And if I hear, what are you talking about? No, that's franchisor. No, we get pretty great service from them, and they're always there to help us. And you need to really investigate and do your homework.
Yeah. I think it's because you need to know who you're talking to, and then that way you can validate that against the rest. So if you talk to somebody that left the system, they're just saying the franchisor is horrible, and then and they tell you why. Just don't leave it at that, but give me some specifics. Validate those specifics with people that are in the system, and don't just take one or two people's word for it. You need to talk to more than that to really try to get a sense of it. And then you can be like, oh, that guy was probably not a very good franchisee, or wow, that guy has some insight that these other ones are kind of, as I kind of see where that could go, and this might not be the brand. And oh my gosh, there's so many franchises out there. Let's go. Anything else? I mean, we could go on and on. So I'm fine continuing on this track a little bit more. And then I want to get into some of the private equity stuff. So get a list of franchises, start talking to them, and then you get into the point where you have the disclosure document, you're reading that, you get an franchise attorney before you actually, probably before you go meet the franchisor, because you don't want to spend the money too early because that'd be a waste of money. But you're getting to like, I think I'm going to go meet these guys. And if I like what I see, I'm going to buy this thing. That's the time to get the attorney. And then you're talking to franchisees, talking to the corporate staff. Everyone's selling each other. The franchisor is selling the prospective franchisee selling the franchisor and how great they're going to be. So now all of that's happening. Maybe it's probably pre-discovery day in this part of the process, Doc. Like what else is next in your mind?
So any business that you do, you need to do a projection of sales and what your costs are going to be. And I find that there are franchisees who are willing to share that with you. I tell anybody anything they want to know. I'll give them copies of financial statements if they ask me for them. But most people don't want you to start off with a question, how much money do you make?
Yeah. Or, hey, can I see your financial statement? That'd be even worse.
Well, but you can construct a financial statement if you ask the right questions. And the right
Yes.
questions are, what kind of volume do you think I might get from a similar location?
Yep.
What kind of cost of goods should I be looking to achieve? What kind of rent should I have? How much payroll will I need? And if you get those three or four things, you can construct a financial statement and a projection.
Everyone, that is a much better way to start getting accurate information, because you're not asking them directly what they're doing, and you'll probably get a better answer doing it this way. It might not be exact to them dollar for dollar, but that is a way for them. The walls come down. They're not talking about their own financials. They can choose to give it to you or kind of what they see. And so you prefacing it that way, I'd say brings the walls down. And then if you're building that rapport, you just might get somebody like Doc that will say, hey, you're not an idiot. You sound like you'd be a good franchisee. I'm happy to send you some more details around this as well.
Yeah. We have a franchisee association. Some systems have franchise advisory council, but both of those types of organizations are great sources of information and help. We talked about the IFA. I think it's important for franchisees to participate with IFA because there's so many great educational things going on there. Plus, in environments like we have today, IFA is up on Capitol Hill fighting to protect small
Yep.
business in this whole coronavirus thing with, how much money $2 trillion is,
Gosh.
That would keep me in lunch money for a long
That would
time.
expand your wine cellar. How many bottles do
Well,
you have?
about 5,000 right now.
You have like 5,012 with the last shipment that just got dropped off.
That's right.
Hey, it's Eric here. I hear from a lot of people that they're looking to buy their first brand or maybe their second or third brand, and they're not sure where to start, or they're not sure if they're looking in the right places. Well, that's where I come in. I help people find really good brands. And if you're thinking about your second or third, or maybe your first brand, let's set up a time to talk. You can go to talkwitheric.com. That's ERIK, talkwitheric.com. Now back to the show.
I've never gotten into this level of detail that I'm about ready to, but building a Proforma. People ask for what's your net profit, what's your EBITDA and all that. But even that, if you're asking those questions, you're really not building a good Proforma because you don't know like the level, how they do their accounting or any of that stuff. I like what you were saying is in my mind, Doc, it's do the big rocks that are part of the income. If it's fitness, it's average the revenue per customer, and then your churn, your retention rate. That's an important piece of it. So understand that and understand your big expenses. So I would like be diving into that type of stuff so I could build my own pro forma versus just asking someone how much money they made, because you never know if it's location driven or whatever. So how would you, not having an actual pro forma from a franchisee, would you investigate a new franchise? Like, how would you do that?
Well, the best way is what I was just talking about, and that is calling existing franchisees and asking them the right questions. Otherwise, you're flying blind. I mean, some franchisors will provide financial information in their item 19, but not all franchisors do that.
What would you say? Is it a good thing or a bad thing that they don't do that? I know a lot, like the vast majority of franchisors that I know do put that financial information in there, but I don't know how accurate it is. Accurate factually, but I don't know how accurate it is in terms of like everybody could do that.
And that's a great point because especially when you're smaller, when your business, so I started off single store, sole operator. And so what did I charge to the store? Everything I legally could. Okay? And so you don't know what that franchisee is charging in their P&L. You have no idea. Are they paying their grandmother's health insurance premiums? Are they their kid's car included in that? You don't know. And you don't know how they're doing their depreciation. You don't know any of those things. So there's so many different ways you can construct a P&L that are all legal, but they change the way the business looks.
Yep.
So if you can get those key indicators, the possible sales volume, okay, I've seen, when they call me, I'm going to say, look, I have stores that do $250,000 a year, and I have stores that do over $1 million a year. And then, but if I get that range, okay, now it's up to me to kind of look at the location and figure it out. And if I can get cost of goods, if I can get payroll, and I can get occupancy cost, I can construct, because insurance, business insurance, I can call my insurance agent and get that number. Health insurance, I can call my provider and get that number. I can get every other number in that P&L once I have those three. The top three would be sales, cost of sales, and labor.
Yep.
If I can get those three, and if somebody can tell me, and usually your franchisor will tell you what kind of rent you should be able to pay for that concept. So we know, for instance, that our occupancy cost needs to be below 20%. And once it starts climbing over that, it makes it more difficult to make money. But the top three, the big three we call them, will tell me everything I need to know to construct my own financial statement.
And I think where people start to miss it as well, Doc, is they make these things too complicated. They start to have different formulas in there. And anytime you start to add another number, another percentage of something, your chances of being accurate is just off a little bit more, So
Right.
I see some franchisors that have just very complex Excel spreadsheets that are blank, but they give them to the prospective franchisee, and then they model it.
A template.
Yep, a template, and then but it's just really complex and with different formulas and whatnot. So, so many, I got geeked out on that for a while. I'm like, oh, this is great, but now I'm almost going back old school and just give me the basic income. What are the basic big expenses, and let me construct that. And then when I'm talking to franchisees, what I'll do when I'm validating, I'll be like, hey, Doc, I'm looking at payroll, of this much for this amount of, this particular store. Is this on the average range of what you see, or is this on the high range or low range, And then you start to ask them questions like that, and they're even more inclined to give you kind of the real accurate information that they see across the board.
That's exactly right. And what I always do is take that spreadsheet and I put in the numbers that I think are going to work. And then I keep reducing the sales until the bottom line says zero.
Yep.
And so that's my break even.
Yep.
And then I have to make a decision. Can I do that much volume? And if I'm only doing that much, what's the point, right? I'm not going to make any money. So I have to get comfortable, and it's a guess, projection's a guess.
It is. The person that is wanting more numbers and can't really get them, should they just buy an existing business because at least they can see a full P&L for 3 years? Or is there a way that they can get more comfortable as a franchisee without having real numbers?
Well, I'd always prefer to buy an existing business over an unknown, because you do have that track record.
Mm-hmm.
But, this is where your franchisor has to come in. But why do you buy a franchise? You buy a franchise because somebody's already developed a system that works.
Yep.
And they hand you a book and they say, this is how we do it here. And if you follow the book, your chances of success are better. Providing numbers, it's easier to get numbers from franchisees, because the franchisor has too many legal restraints.
Yep.
On what they can tell you. And if you get a franchise salesperson who says, you can make $1 million here, this is, that's $1 million location, I'd run away from that franchise as quickly as I could.
They can't tell you that. They have, unless it's in the FDD, whatever's in the FDD, that franchise disclosure document under the item 19, or even on the expense side in the item 7, that's what they can tell you. If they tell you anything outside of that,
that's right,
they shouldn't be trusted.
Right. That's why I said run.
Run.
Most franchise salespeople are more educated today than they were when I came in to franchising. I mean, I didn't know anything. They didn't ask me for a financial statement. If they had, I wouldn't be sitting here today because I didn't have any money. But you just have to dig. I mean, franchisees typically are willing to help a newbie.
Yes,
so
they are.
I get a phone call. I don't consider myself above taking a phone call from somebody who is just starting out, because I understand now how important that would have been to me when I started.
Yep.
And, I didn't get successful by myself. It took a lot of people to help get there.
That's a really good point. I pay a lot of money every year, 6 figures every year, to be around people that are smarter than me and better than me, and yet that we're willing to help each other out. And you don't have to pay a lot of money for that, because there's a lot of free groups you can do that with. But just even in your own franchise, get around really smart, successful people and add value to them however you can, because I'm the same way, Doc. Like I'm where I am because of other people right now, and they've shortcutted my success without a doubt.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because one of the things I tell managers in our stores, hire above yourself whenever you can, because it's not a threat to job security. Everybody that you have around you will influence how you're judged
Mm-hmm.
by your superior, your manager, your regional, your owner, whatever. And I know a lot of our store managers have produced other store managers I can think of one or two stores in Houston where we developed probably 7 or 8 really, really good store managers out of
Mm-hmm.
one store, just because that was our training store. But don't be afraid to hire above yourself.
No. No, I'm good at some things. I'm not good at everything. And I don't even mind hiring smarter people than me with the things that I am good at. Like,
Right.
I love to hire people smarter than me, and I have them all around me on my team.
That's exactly right.
What's next for you? Like, what do you have going on next in your franchising world?
Well, with this virus, I'm thinking about going off to Tahiti or someplace.
Let me know when you do that and you have extra room. I'm
Yeah.
quarantined with my wife and 3 girls. Actually, we are having the time of our lives. Like I was traveling the last 3 years quite a bit, learning. I was doing a lot of learning from different people. And a lot of that stopped. Well, it all stopped. Now we're at home, and I loved canceling these flights and being at home with the family like I used to. And my traveling is going to be way less than it was. But I'm one of these weird guys that's enjoying this thing, being home and isolated. But Doc, I live on an 80-acre hobby ranch nestled against the hills in South Dakota. So it's not a
Oh,
bad life for someone like myself. But city guy, it'd drive them crazy. But I'm loving it right now. So if you get to Tahiti, just let me know where you go, because I just might have to come visit.
okay. I've always threatened my staff. I think I'm going to Tahiti. I'm a little stressed out.
Just lock up that wine cellar. So what's next for you is Tahiti. Do you advise any franchisees, franchisors, or people like that? Because I'm starting to do a lot more advising of franchisees and advising franchisors, because I'm starting a franchisor in the roofing, siding, and gutter space. Do you do any advising like that to people that are in franchising?
Well, I think this is a good opportunity for people to be acquiring
Yeah,
existing
yeah.
businesses, because I think, and look, nobody knows yet, but I think there are probably people out there who are close to retirement and
Hmm.
are saying, you know what, this is it. This is the sign. I'm going to sell my business and retire. And so I think some good deals can be made out there like that. If I were in a growth mode, I'd be approaching franchisees in our system right now to see if they have any interest in selling. What's next for me? Not sure. And I take it a day at a time. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm mentoring 4 or 5 young folks,
I
and
love that.
that's fun. And I actually now am a partner in a winery out in Napa. And so that's really fun.
Oh yeah.
Trying to enjoy the things I enjoy doing. I'm still very active at the IFA. That's where I am.
Tell me about mentoring. Like, why are you mentoring some people right now?
There's a poem called The Bridge Builder. And the Bridge Builder poem is about this old man who's out on a trip, and he comes to this huge, wide, deep chasm. And so he climbs down and makes his way across and climbs back out. And he gets up on the other side and he starts to build a bridge across this chasm. And this young guy walks up and says, "Why are you building a bridge? You already crossed." And he said, "Because someday a young man will, not to be sexist, but a young man,
We know man, women, so go
right,
ahead.
right, a young man will come this way, and I'm building the bridge for him." And so the moral of that poem is that I didn't achieve what I achieved alone. There were people who helped me along the way, people I could call for advice. And that's what I'm trying to do, build the bridge for those young folks. I mean, you talk to Sean, I know, and
that's why we're here, is because of Sean.
that's correct. And so, I'm really enjoying. I think he's starting to mentor me, tell you the truth. But
isn't that something?
But there are several others that I've met through IFA. I give a scholarship every year at IFA, and the scholarship winners, I try to stay in touch with them. And I'm helping one now who's having some challenges with his franchisor. And a couple others, one that's not even in the franchise business, but we stay in touch. They'll call me for advice. What's interesting? I'm having people who worked for me 30 years ago who are calling me these days to say, I just want to thank you. And I said, thank me for what? For teaching me all that I learned when I was working in your company. And, now I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm this, I'm that. And that's very rewarding when they tell you, I can't thank you enough for the basics that you taught me. You taught me about integrity and work ethic. I never realized. I never actually thought of it that way. It just was the natural thing to do. But boy, when I hear those stories today, when I get those phone calls, it just makes me feel great.
And what's interesting now is everyone out there that's a franchisee, or you own a business, or you're a manager, you don't even have your own business, but you are managing people, you have the opportunity to be that type of influence. And most likely you'll never know the type of influence that you've had on people, good or bad, but you are having influence. And like you said, 30 years later, I have people that worked for me, 15, 20 years ago, reaching out to me, not at that level, hopefully at some point, but not at that level. And then what I've done is I'm looking back 15 years ago as I was mentored, formally and informally, and just reflecting back every week, Doc, I look back and I'm like, I learned this lesson from, you name it, whoever that mentor was. And it's a weekly thing for me right now. And I'll text a buddy of mine like, hey, remember when so-and-so would always say this thing? And we're like, wow, he was smarter than we thought. And so like, I'm in that point of realizing that I had mentors teaching me along the way, and it's just now coming back to me in some ways. So I'm a huge believer in mentors, huge believer in helping people. Like I said, I have that Facebook group where I've been spending so much time helping people through all of these loan things and everything that's going on, and getting the experts, like you were mentioning with the apple pie. Ron has been on this podcast before, and I was actually thinking I might want to get him in here again to help some folks out. But that's the kind of people that I've been having in my Facebook group, helping franchisees that they may be getting incredible help from their franchisor, and they may not. But now what's really cool, Doc, is they're all helping each other.
Right. And Ron's a dear friend, he and Karen, and he's actually helping me get through this loan process as well. So,
we all need other people. Well, Doc, I appreciate you coming on. And would you be open to coming into some of my groups at some point and doing a little mentoring every now and then with some of the franchise tribe?
Yeah, as long as you double the salary I get from the IFA.
Oh, that is done, guaranteed. As long as you return, like maybe you'll have a fund that you give the whole group. Double the scholarship.
Yeah, well, when I was treasurer of the IFA, I doubled my salary every year.
Oh my gosh.
Twice zero is still zero.
Oh, I can just imagine. But that's it, man. That is it. I love your heart. And we'll get you on in to help the group, because that's what it's about. So thanks again.
Sure. My pleasure. I'm honored to have been asked.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Secrets Podcast. Whether you're watching or listening, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to whatever channel you're listening on. If you want my help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business, please visit franchisesecrets.com.